I held the door with my shoulder and the hammer wedged under it, and the wood still jumped in and out against me. The bag dug into my hip. Everything in it clinked when the door shook. My phone screen blinked red at me. 1 bar, then none. The radio was dead. I could hear boots coming up the hall. Not one set. A lot. All hitting at the same time. Far at first, then close. And under it, drums. Slow, steady, like someone walking something in, step by step. I kept my hand flat on the door. The paint on it felt chalky and cold. Every time the beats hit, the latch rattled and the door swelled. I had the hammerhead jammed under the stone, right up against the bottom of the door. It slid a little each time. My breath made a fog in the strip of moonlight under the door. The wind outside had been loud all night, but in here the draft moved the wrong way. It pushed on my face. It carried an iron stink. It made my eyes water. I'm telling you because you asked how I got the scars on my wrist. You wanted a story, and I said you wouldn't like it. I'm telling you because if anyone else goes up there with a sack and a list, I don't want them to say I didn't warn them. It was a simple job on paper. Hill Monastery. Ruined. Old. No roof over most of it. I had a name from a client, Anjo, and a deadline. Midnight, he said, because he had a buyer. He sent a list. Bone boxes. A travel cross. Anything with seals or old paint. Light hand, he said. They've had a fire up there. Part of it fell down last winter. No one goes there at night. You'll have it to yourself. I got there late afternoon. I parked down by the dirt turn and walked up the track. Grass had grown over it, and I could see old boot marks frozen hard in the mud from the spring. My bag knocked my leg with each step. The place sat on the spine of the hill, a black bite of walls against the sky. No roof, like he said. Big, open sky over the nave. The wind came down the hill, then changed, and I felt a cold finger go up under my jacket from the opposite way. That should have set me off. I thought weather. Valleys do that. Inside had ash. A lot of ash. The tiles in the big room were gray and slick. It smelled like a stove that had burned wet wood. It smelled like wet coins. There were still scraps of banners high up, out of reach, hanging off old brackets. Torn. The kind of colored cloth you see in paintings of processions. They moved a little in the draft. Not with the wind from outside. With something else. I told myself it was air slipping through cracks. I took it in. I saw where the scriptorium had been. Slanted tables. Little shelves. There was a wall with soot all over it, with nail marks down it where something had been torn down in a hurry. I set my bag by that wall and clicked on my headlamp and said, "All right, quick in and out." There were still bits of writing. A monk had scratched notes into the plaster where the paint had peeled. I saw the letters clear. Hold fast. Keep the line. Lower the banner. It looked like they'd written the same things over and over, and then used their fingernails when the charcoal was gone. I took a picture of that for myself. I don't know why. It felt like a human thing. I started in the side rooms. The first thing I picked was a small bone box. The lid had glass. Under the glass was a finger bone with a label as thin as onion skin. Latin. My Latin is bad. The wax seals were cracked long ago. It came away easy. When I pulled it off the shelf and slid it into a cloth sleeve, I heard it. One drum, far away. One hit. It rolled through the walls. I stood and listened. Nothing. Wind. A bird. My own boots shifting on ash. I laughed a little. I said, Don't start. I took the box. I found a travel cross in a drawer. It folded into itself. I put that in the bag. 2 hits on the drum. Not thunder. Thunder doesn't count like that. It sounded organized. I told myself there was a farm down in the valley and some kid had a band. I knew that was wrong. The drum came from the stone, from the hollows in it. I worked faster. There were iron nails wrapped in cloth. They were just old nails, but the client liked iron. There was a little reliquary pendant with a green ribbon turned brown. Every time I lifted something and slid it into the bag, I heard more. The drum had a partner now, then another. It started to sound like someone marching soldiers over a bridge, a field away. Left, right, left. I didn't want to think that. I stopped thinking that. Before I got 10 things, the light went weird. It had been late day orange. Then, in the space of turning around and picking up my bag, the floor went black and the sky over the nave went purple. The shadows went longer. I pulled my phone out. I looked at the time. It had been 4. Now it said 7:21. I had not been there that long. I stood still and listened for the world. You can tell when you're alone on a hill. You hear insects in the highway and the wind in trees. All I heard was the wind hitting the open walls, and under it, the drums. Not far now, and another sound. Not speech, not singing. A mixed low sound like men saying numbers together under their breath. I went to the door. I came in. Gone was a stupid thought. It was still there, but the path outside had a drift of ash across it I did not remember. It was high. It looked like snow that had been pushed by a plow, but gray. I put my boot into it, and it was light and then heavy at the same time. It grabbed. When I pulled out, the ash kept the shape of my boot, and beside it, in a clear line, there were other boot shapes. Not mine. Bigger. Different heel. They were in a row. Left, right, left. I looked behind me at the floor inside. The ash there shifted in a long, low wave, and then a line formed, ankle deep, and went down the hall. Not a wind. The draft still came from my face backwards. It felt like a hand on my throat. It was against the night. I hit the radio. Base. You copy? I need a check-in. Static. I walked down the hall toward the scriptorium to get more light. On the way I heard a voice. Muffled. Not through the radio. From the hall. Old. Hard. Calling a word I could not understand. Then more voices. Softer. Answering with the same word. That doesn't make sense written down. In the moment, it made sense to my body. I flinched. My heart stuttered. The drums hit on my heartbeat now. I had been moving off their time without noticing it. I put my hand out to the wall so I could get my own step back. Back at the scriptorium, I put 2 of the pieces back where I'd found them. The travel cross. The nail. My hand wouldn't let go of the bone box. That sounds like a line. I mean, my fingers didn't work right. They cramped. I pried them open with my other hand and set the box down. The drums paused. 1 breath. They started again, closer. The voices were not in the hall now. They were in the nave. They were not prayers. They used the same tune that prayers use, the rise and fall, the call, and the answer, but the words were clipped and the air cut when they said them. The prayer chant turned into numbers. 1, 2, 1, 2. Low, calm, certain. I went to leave again and saw the safe places shrink without me moving. That's the best way I can say it. The nave had felt open when I came in. Now it felt like a trap. The aisles were shadows with edges. The corners were thick. The side room with the slanted tables felt like a box with a lid. I went into the sacristy where the cupboards were and shut the door and put my back on it. I counted 10 breaths. The drums kept time. The cold draft came through the keyhole into my teeth. I checked my phone. 30%. Then 15. Then it blinked and said 5. I hadn't touched it. The clock had jumped again. 9:43. Habit. I thought maybe if I gave everything back, it would stop. I pulled the bag around and opened it. That iron stink came up. It had been faint before. Now it was strong enough to taste. My tongue went metal. The ash I had tracked in had lined up on the floor beside me in neat little ridges. I put the ribbon pendant back. Nothing changed. I put the iron nail back. The boots in the hall all hit at the same time once. The door behind me clicked in the latch. I pressed my shoulder into it harder. There was a whisper right by my ear. I swear it. It was not words. It was like a breath that carried someone else's throat. I said out loud, "I'm leaving. I'm not staying." My own voice sounded wrong. It sounded small. I put everything back. I took the list out and checked. I had 2 more to get. A seal and something with paint. The drums did not care about lists. The boots came to the door, then they were gone. Then they were in the hall again. It wasn't that they moved back. It was like time skipped and put them in a new place. I pushed out into the hall and went the other way, down toward the undercroft. The steps there were half missing. I slid down on my hip when my heel hit ash, and the ash moved the wrong way. It climbed up my ankle. I shook it off, and it fell in strips like cloth. I kept going because I thought maybe there would be a door out the lower side. Down there, the air was still and freezing. It burned my nose. The iron stink was a wall. The undercroft had boxes along the wall. Chests. Broken lids. One coffin. Stone. Flat lid. It had been pushed half off. Someone had tried to open it a long time ago and gave up. I put my fingers under the edge and lifted. My nails hurt. The lid moved. I slid it. Inside was bone and cloth. And under the cloth, against the bones, there was a rod. Wood gone dark. A crosspiece. A roll of cloth on it like a rug, bound tight. There was a bundle of leather straps around it. I saw old paint in a line on the edge of the cloth. Red turned brown. Gold turned dark. A little piece flaked off and stuck to my thumb. I shook it off. It stuck to my glove instead. I had that wall of warnings in my head, and I put my hand on the rod anyway. I told myself I was going to put it out in the nave and say a prayer I half remembered. Stupid. I told myself I was going to use it to dismiss whatever I had stepped on. The writing had said lower the banner. I turned it into raise to dismiss because I needed it to mean that. I pulled the rod out and the straps came with it and hung down. The cloth rolled on it stayed tight. It was heavier than it looked. It had an oily feel, like resin. It was cold in my hands like metal. The leather strap swung and brushed my wrist. It stuck there. Not like glue. Like it had a burr. I pulled and it bit my skin a little. I didn't notice that the first time. I went back up and the hall felt smaller. The monks' tables had moved closer to each other. They hadn't, but that's how it felt. The drums were not far now. The boots had a ripple in them. A section moved, then another. I saw dust jump in straight lines along the floor like something invisible had stepped on it. In the moonlight that came through the open roof, I saw shapes. Not faces. Ranks. Negative space. Shoulders. Helmets. When they passed under the open sky, the ash clung to the shapes and I saw tattered strips that hung off poles, and then were gone again. I froze and they froze. Then, in the next blink, they were all 5 steps closer, lined along the nave, and I had lost a minute. My phone said 10:30. It had said 9:52 last time I looked. I tried the radio again. Bass. If you can hear me, I am not in control of time here. I'm leaving. I am leaving. Static. Then, under the static, a voice. Muffled. Far. Not speaking to me. A call. Hold. Then, an answer from many throats. Hold. The sound of leather creaked with it. The prayer song of the place took that sound and warped it. It used the same tones. It put numbers into the chant. 1, 2. 1, 2. Calm. Cold. I backed into a cell off the nave and shut the door. I stuck my hammer under it and braced with my back and heels. The bag sat on my lap now, and the rod across it. The door jumped with each drum. My light flickered and then went to a dim ring at the edge. The moon under the door was a thin blade. Ash sifted in neat lines through the crack. Not just blown, but as if poured from a jug. I looked at my hand on the rod. The leather strap had wrapped around my wrist 3 times. I don't know when. It dug in where the skin is thin. I pulled. It tightened. I felt a little click in the wood. Not a noise. A little shift. Like a thing sitting into a notch. I made myself breathe slow. Okay, I said. Okay, you're not going to move me. I said it to the door. I said it to myself. I thought about how to make noise to push the thing back. I took the rod in both hands. I slid the strap lower and wrapped it tighter on purpose to keep a grip. I thought, I'll raise it out there. They'll see it and go. Like a parade when the flag drops and everyone leaves. That's what I told myself. I knew better. I did it anyway. When the door thumped, I unwedged the hammer and yanked it open on the beat. The hall outside was full of the smell. Iron and old water. Yakuris. The air looked thick. Not fog, the way heat over a road looks, but cold. They were there in that air. Low. The first ranks only came to my waist. The ash made their legs. Then the next rank stood taller, and as they reached the open roof, they filled out, like moonlight made them real. I heard metal edge on metal. Leather. The soft murmur of many men breathing. Not gasping. Just the pull in and the push out. Calm. They were calm. My feet took me into the nave without asking me. That's the truth. I didn't decide. The drum and the boots had my joints. I stepped there because it was the count. My heels hit on the ones and my toes lifted on the twos. I stepped into the center where the floor was clearer. I held up the rod and said, loud, stupid, stand down, dismiss, go. My voice broke. It sounded like a kid. I lifted the rod high, and my pulse hit so hard it made the rod tremble. In the same breath, I pulled the leather with my left hand, and the cloth on the rod let go and rolled down. It dropped a little dust, and then there it was. The banner. The paint had kept its color where it was rolled inside. Red, so dark it was almost brown. Gold lines. A shape on it I couldn't see properly because it moved in the draft that went the wrong way. The strip of it brushed my cheek, and it was cold and gritty. It smelled like iron and smoke. Everything changed. The boots that had been out of sync, different groups, clicked into one. The drums went from many to one. They and my heart found each other. They matched. The hall shook with it. The ranks that had been half there set and filled. There were faces now under helmets, mouths set soft, eyes not looking at me but not looking. They did not glow. They were like men caught in a glass. Their beards had ash in them. Their boots pressed the ash flat, Then the ash sprang up again and shot to the next line like it liked the shape. Tattered bits of other banners lifted on poles behind them. Some were burned down to the thread. Some had the edge. They all leaned in the wrong wind. A voice sounded to my right and to my left. Not one man, but the idea of a man's voice. The way a rehearsal sounds when you stand outside a drill hall. It said something like dress, and the whole line moved a hair and straightened. They made room for me without looking like they made room. The strap on the banner cinched on my wrist hard enough to make my hand go numb. It was a mean pinch. It sank into the cut it had already made. The wood under my palm went warm. That was the first warm thing in hours. It ran up my forearm and into my chest. It hit my heart, and my heart answered like it had been waiting. The drum was not outside anymore. I tried to throw the rod. I put both hands on the strap and pulled to slip it. It didn't give. It didn't yank me. It just didn't give. I brought the banner down. The line stepped forward one. I flinched and brought it up again, and the line stopped. I took a step backward without meaning to. The line took that step with me, and then an extra half to make me right. I understood then. Not with my head. In my legs. I was inside them. I wasn't a person in a room. I was a piece of them. Standard. Bearer. Missing until I showed up and lifted it. All the warnings had said, keep the banner low. Hold fast. Keep the line. I had done none of that. I had told them to go, and they heard form. Someone shouted from the back where the shadow was thick. Not at me. Over me. The old cadence call that had been prayer 100 years and then dirt for more. The first rank answered. The sound went through me. It shook my teeth. It was not loud. That's the thing. It was steady. It had weight. I thought of my client and his deadline and laughed a little because it came all wrong, and the man behind me in the shadow laughed back without humor. Just a breath out his nose. Then he said a word I didn't know. It felt like a hand on the back of my neck. I tried to run. My left foot went out of time. Everything stuttered. The drums hit me like a palm on my chest. The line closed. A man's shoulder I could not see pushed against my shoulder. My body fixed my mistake by itself. My feet found the beat again, because if they didn't, my ribs were going to break. The banner wanted my arm high. Not wanted. Needed. If I lowered it, the pressure in my chest went bad. If I raised it, the pressure eased. I raised it. We moved. The ranks took me, not like hands taking you. We turned on the same pivot and went around the nave in a square. The ash made a wake. The safe places I had used, the side rooms, the cell with the door, the sacristy, all of it close to me because I could not break without breaking. The path to the door I had come in went right past me, and I did not take it. The strap pulled on my skin when I thought about it. The iron smell filled my mouth until it was all I could taste. The prayer chant in the stones above us said numbers in a tune that stuck to your ears, and I could not tune it out. I saw the warnings again in my head, clear as the writing had been on the wall. The hand that wrote, "Lower the banner." The hand that wrote, "Keep the line." I had told myself that meant they held the dead down. They were holding their line for a battle they had lost. This place had been theirs. Now it was not. They kept a watch anyway. When I lifted their sign, they thought the watch was relieved, and they rose. They did not know I was not theirs. The straps did not care about names. We went around twice. The second time, I tried to count the men. There were more each time I blinked. They came up out of the ash, made legs first, then the rest. I saw marks of burns on them. I saw ribbons of cloth that had once had saints on them, now black. I saw a face looking like it knew me. That was just a trick of light. I refused that trick. The cold draft kept pushing against my mouth, so my lips were dry and cracked and tasted like dust. My throat hurt from the air. My heart beat on the beat, and my chest was a drum that made the sound for them. We reached the mouth of the Undercroft stairs, and the voice called something that meant, to my body, down. We went down in sync, and where steps were missing, we didn't notice it, because the men on the sides lifted, and then the ones behind slipped into the gaps, and the whole thing flowed into the dark. I didn't need the light. I couldn't have used it if I did. My phone didn't exist. My radio didn't. There was just the wood in my palm, and the leather in my cut, and the drum in my chest, and the beat in the earth. In the Undercroft, the air went still as stone in winter. The iron stink was everything. The walls were wet and cold. The ash that had drifted down there rose and stood in rows tall as men. It brushed my jeans and then moved away, respectful, like it knew my place. I tried once more. "Please," I said. "I'm not yours." The call from behind me answered me like it was answering a child who had asked a question during drill. It said a word, and the word meant, "Hold your tongue." I held it. We stopped in the middle where I had found the banner. The coffin was there, open and waiting. My bones knew I would not be putting it back. We made a square around it, 4 ranks deep. The voice called the count, and we stood with the banner up. My arm shook. My hand had no blood in it now. I could not feel my fingers. The strap had cut a line into me. I felt it as a wet warmth under the leather, and then nothing. That's the shape of the scar now. 3 loops, you asked. We stood. The beat was my heart, and the hall shaped it and sent it back, and it came back twice as heavy and went into my ribs and out again. The men breathed in me, and I breathed in them. That sounds backwards, but it is what it was. Time slipped while we stood. I looked up, and the little strip of moonlight that came through the broken roof moved in jumps. It was on the wall, then the floor, then gone. The chant in the walls softened like they were tired and kept going, because the count does not change just because you are tired. I've thought since then that the client did not lie. He didn't know. He wanted his boxes and nails. He wanted his old stories to sell. He gave me a midnight time because he thought it would scare me and make me move faster. It did. It was the wrong deadline. There was another clock in that place that had nothing to do with phones and buyers and roads. It was the one beating in my chest that night, and when it found the drums it liked, it gave them what they asked. You want a warning. Here it is. The drums are there already. You don't bring them. You don't have to believe me. I didn't. If you go up that hill, and you lift what they left, no one will come in after you. That's not a threat. That's a plain fact. The wind goes the wrong way there. The safe rooms get small. The ash wants to be feet. The prayer sounds pretend to be prayers until they don't. And if you pick up a thing with straps, don't wrap them around your wrist, even to get a better grip, even if your hands are cold. We stood and we stood. At some point, a piece of the banner cloth turned and touched my mouth, and I tasted old smoke and iron and salt. I swallowed. It burned. The voice behind me said a word I did not know, and all the men answered it, and the sound tightened the skin on my arms. The banner quivered with my heartbeat. The last thing I remember before the light in my head went from white to red and then dim was the beat. It was steady. It was everything. It ran the hall. It ran the line. It ran me. It had run me since the first little bone box went into a bag, and I told myself that was nothing. It wasn't nothing. It was one tap on a drum that had been waiting. I don't know how long I stood. I know I am still standing now when I close my eyes. I lift my hands without thinking, and I feel the leather dig. I hear the count come back. when my heart skips in my sleep. The boots around my bed all hit again to catch it and make it right. Sometimes I wake with the smell in my mouth and I can't get it out for days. That's all I have left. The one image that stays is the strip of moon on the banner, and how, when it slid off, the paint on the cloth didn't fade with the dark. It waited for the next beat, and then it moved when I moved, and to this day, if I hold my breath, I can hear it. Left, right, left. I hope you enjoyed that story. If you did, go ahead and hit subscribe. I've got plenty more coming. Give it a like if it sent a chill down your spine. And, of course, there's another one you can find on my channel. See you on the next one.